can't manage what we don't measure. I think that's a pretty common saying, but it's really true. And let's take that a step further. When we talk about continuous herd improvement, the record keeping is just one part of this process, but it is really impossible without it. That's our goal here, is to increasingly improve our herd, and whether that's on so many different aspects, but that's our whole main purpose for record keeping. After thorough records are documented, use them. Notice patterns, which factors are related to which outcomes. When we can attribute an outcome, either positive or negative, to a certain practice, that really increases the efficiency in our management decisions. And then the final step is, as we go through this cycle, is go back to step one, but this time adjust your goals. Decrease problems that occurred last calving season, capitalize on things that went well, continuous improvement, basically. Each one of us can do something to improve things. We just need to know where we are now and where we want to be. In the herd improvement cycle, setting goals is the first step. First, before we even get into what type of information we need to be collecting, we need to figure out what our individual goals are for our operation. It's funny to think about, but there's over 20,000 cattle operations in Minnesota, and each one is different. Each one does things differently, and more importantly, collects records differently. Are we a seed stock producer, raising purebred cattle, or are we commercial herd? From there, are we retaining our calves to finish out for ourselves? Are we selling them in the fall or spring whenever you sell? Do we keep our own replacement heifers, or do you purchase them? And depending on these answers, and probably many more, these different goals require different management, different standards, and the topic we're on tonight, different record keeping. Most importantly, it will help you zone in on what kind of data to collect and what to measure. So that will help us.
All right, so let's kind of get to the nut and bolts of it. So what do I keep track of? That's kind of what we're here for. Is this list can look pretty daunting. You can start keeping track of individual cow records, reproductive efficiency, vaccination records, treatment records, bull records, cattle inventory, feed and mineral, and just financial records in general. So there's so many things that we really should be keeping track of. But for tonight, we're just going to focus on those first two. So we're going to focus on the individual cow records tonight and the reproductive efficiency of those. I'm going to go to the next slide, Tarah. All right, so even before we start calving, we have a lot that we need to keep track of. So one of the first ones is, when did we let the bulls out? And if you AI your herd, what are your specific AI dates? Did you AI the whole herd all at once, or by individual cows if they showed heats? So we need to know when, we let these bulls out, so we know when we start calving. It's never good when all of a sudden you're surprised that, oops, we started calving January 24th. We're not ready for it. So we want to make sure we know when those dates are. And then that kind of goes into the next one, just expecting calving dates. So if we know when the bulls are out, we know when we're going to start calving. Obviously you might get some surprises in there. Some girls like to go a week or 2 weeks early, but at least you've got a much better idea of when they need to be. And then one of mine that I like to do is, I want to know who my open cows are, who my cull cows are. One of the biggest things, and I think one of the most profitable things that we can do, is we can preg check our cattle. So in the fall, before we start, when we work our cattle, it's really nice if we can get the vet in there and preg check. It's nothing worse than having a cow stick around and to find out that she's open. All she did was cost you money and you didn't even get a calf for her. So it's really nice to know who those open girls are, so we can either put them in a feedlot, fatten them up a little bit, or just get rid of them because they're costing you money. And then the other thing that we need to know is, when did you take your bulls out? If you're AIing, when did your cleanup bulls come out? Or if you do just breed by bulls, when did you pull them? So then when you're kind of supposed to end, and you can give that data to your veterinarian. It'll help them figure out if you have an open cow or a pregnant cow. Kind of gives them a little bit better idea. All right, so then when we start calving, what is important to track? So I got this first section here with the cow ID. I think that's pretty important. Everybody should have an ID on their cow. One thing that Brenda Miller likes to say is, put 2 ear tags in. those girls always lose them. So try to have 2 in there. We want to make sure we label our calves when they're born. You know, for us at our place, we like to label the calves the same as what the dam is, what that cow is. So when I go out in the field, I know exactly who she belongs to. I don't need to bring a book with me to find out, oh, calf 57 belongs to cow 1824. I like them when they're labeled the exact same, but that's just my preference. Everybody does it different. The other very important thing that I think should be on every ear tag, if you've got room, is their birth date. That date is so important. We use that date to figure out how old they are. I like to use that if all of a sudden you have a calf that's getting some scours or getting sick, you can see what their birth date is and you can find out that that calf is a week old. You kind of know what to treat for, what to look for. Or is that calf a month old and we had some weather changes? Are we getting some pneumonia? So that birth date is so important. If you're AIing and you've got some specific sire data, I like to add that on the tag as well, just to have it there. And then just to keep track of in your calving record book, your notebook, wherever you're keeping your records, what the sex of that calf is. And then I also like to keep track of what the calving ease was. Did that cow just spit that calf out real nice and easy? Or was it tangled up backwards and I needed to pull it or I needed to give it some assistance? I think that's something really important that we need to keep track of and just have written down. And then kind of this next side is kind of more things that might be more specific to your operation in general. So birth weights. That's one thing that we don't do is get a birth weight. We're just a commercial producer. And for us, birth weight doesn't give us anything that we're going to use. It's on my list of wishes to do and use someday. I just don't know how to use that data right now. Time born, that's one that we've really paid attention to this year. We started calving already and we write down exactly or as close as we can get to when that calf was born. And the reason why we do that is colostrum. Colostrum is your number one thing that we need to get into that calf. And if I don't know when that calf was born and I see it sucking at 9 p.m., you know, did it get its colostrum within 6 hours? I have no idea. So now we're starting to write down the time born. So if I know that that calf was born at 9 a.m. and I saw it sucking for the first time at 9 p.m., you know, we might have some troubles. You know, we might make a note of that calf saying, you know, it didn't get colostrum for 12 hours, just kind of one to watch. Another one that can be done is an udder score. This might be a nice way to work on culling some of your cows if you need to, and just, yeah, to kind of write down what everybody's udder is. You know, are they favorable? Are they not? And it might just be a nice way to help cull some of those cows if you're having a hard time picking between a few of them. I like to write down, you know, if we've got twins, if we've got multiples. We had a neighbor that had triplets the other day. So just to kind of note that down and keep track of that. And then the other comment section, this is huge. This can just be anything. We write down, right now it's 20 below up here. So we write down every calf that goes into our hot box just for future reference. So we know if there's something, if they start getting sick, maybe we can trace it to that, or at least we know that that's where they were. So any kind of comment like that, or if we saw it suck, or if we get her in the chute and we check her and she's got 4 good quarters, we'll write that down. Or if she maybe has mastitis, that goes in that comment section as well. All right, Tarah, you can go to the next slide.
Perfect. You know, as we talked about before, each operation is different. Those 20,000 different operations, each one is a little bit different. And each operator will have different preferences for identification and how to weigh animals. Stacey did a great job talking about ear tags and everything, but we do have more options. I know they're not as common, but I do like to just describe them all and pros and cons, things like that. So for identification, we have the normal ear tag, like Stacey described, which you can use different numbers and different colors for different meanings. You know, some people use different colors for their bull and heifer calves. Other will put the left ear for a bull and the right ear for a heifer, or vice versa. You know, it's a very versatile ID form and system. The next step up, maybe I'll do my laser pointer, is the EID, or electronic identification, or an RFID, which is radio frequency identification. These tags have a little button, or it looks like a little button, but it's an embedded microchip. It's attached to a regular ear cattle tag, which is used for the visual identification, but then the microchip that can be scanned with an electronic reader. Here we have the brisket tags. These tend not to get snagged on trees, fence posts, as much as ear tags, like Stacey said, if you want to put them in both ears. But brisket tagging is another form of identification. Tattooing calves in the ear can be also a great permanent option, as well as freeze branding or hot branding. So just kind of some different options that some are more common in Minnesota, but also nice to just know all of our options. So like Stacey said, not everyone weighs their calves, but we wanted to put these options on here. But if this interests you, here are a few of them. The top left picture is a picture of a calf tape. Some are designed to go around the rib cage, while others are designed to measure their hoof size, basically to give an estimate of birth weight. With these options, we're merely estimating. It's not an exact science with these, but it gives you a good guideline and a point to start from, basically. Now here's a sling and a spring scale, kind of like what you do to weigh a really big fish. This one here is a small platform scale, like one that you'd see in like a vet clinic that you'd use for dogs and cats. Now the next two options are if you'd like to weigh them at weaning. The one beneath is the large platform scale that can be used in an alley. This picture here, there are weigh bars or beams that can be installed in a chute. Typically, if the cow is in the head gate, they actually get a good hold of them. With any of these options, it has to make sense and work for you. If you don't use calf weight on your farm, like Stacey, if you don't have use for the weight data, don't spend time collecting it. You have better things to be doing.
All right, so the next one, I just wanted to put up a slide that shows, and this is just what we do, but these handy dandy red books, I like to keep one of these around. It's not my sole record keeping, but it's one of the tools that we do use. It's kind of nice to have in your pocket when you're out looking for calves or finding new ones. So just on this page, it kind of just gives you an idea of how we keep some records. So the calf ID, kind of like I mentioned before, I want that the same as the cow, and that's just my personal preference. To be honest, my fall herd, I give them a tag number 1 through whatever number it is. So we do it different both ways, but for this group, it's a lot larger group. And I want to know who that calf belongs to real quick. And then we're commercial, so we don't really do a whole lot for bull IDs. We do AI our heifers. So I do keep track. So that 1906 is a first calf heifer this year. And that calf is out of Top Gun. So I make sure I keep track of that. And then in that other data, I use some of these columns for other things. So that one right now is hot box. So this week it's been -20. So pretty much everybody's been going in there. And then the birth date, like we kind of mentioned before, that is such an important date to have. So I keep that there, plus what the sex is. And then for birth weight, kind of like we've been mentioning, I don't do that. I would like to someday. I just need to figure out how to use that data to make a better management decision for our place. So in that category, I put what time they were born in. And Brenda always kind of jokes with me and asks, when are they born? Well, on this page, it's pretty much all day long. So it's kind of interesting to watch that too. So, and then calving ease. So number 1 means I either didn't see it or there was just absolutely no issues. She spit the calf out and it was easy for her. Number 5, you can see a couple of those in there. Those were backwards. We seem to have problems with backward calves. So you'll see that on here. And number 3, which I don't have it on here, would be you pulled it, but it was forward facing, just it was stuck or she needed some help. And then, so with that records, we keep that. And then the other ones I kind of wanted to show was we keep an index card for every cow on our place. So the top one, that's cow number 30. And then I just keep track of the real simple information. So I just want to know what date she calved and what she had, and then some basic information. So that number 30, she's kind of a problem cow, but it was kind of interesting to put her on here. In 2019, she had a calf die and we grafted a Holstein calf on her. So I wanted to know that for future reference. And with hers, I thought was kind of neat. 3 years in a row, she calved on the exact same date. So very consistent girl. And then we also keep a little other data too. So for her in 2021, she had mastitis in her right rear quarter. So we wanted to make sure we had that. So if we see the calf sucking and it's on the right rear, she's not getting anything. So we just want to keep that kind of data on there. 1607, she had some issues too. So in 2019, she had twins. She had female twins. We tubed them colostrum, just again, real easy data to put on there. And then this year she had twins again. So kind of interesting that she's been having twins a few times. So just to kind of keep track of it, a few different ways that we do it, but go to the next slide, Tarah.
So here's an example of an Excel spreadsheet. So Stacey mentioned the paper versions. So if you're really tech savvy, Excel, I love Excel. So it's a great method. And right here it's specifically tracking the heat cycles and calving distribution. So as we know, a cow's heat cycle lasts 21 days. So we can measure if she was bred in the first 21-day period, or the second, or the third, or so on. You know, if you're more interested in this topic, the University of Minnesota Moo's Room podcast has a great episode on it, where they really delve into the calving distribution and where you should be, some really good standards. So I recommend anyone going and checking that out. So here I created this graph in this pivot table from my fictional herd. I wish I had a herd this large, but I was able to make this chart depicting the calving distribution. So why do we care about a tight calving window? That's what we're looking at here. We're looking at to see how many heat cycles that they have been stretched out. So why do we care about tightening that up? It's more uniformity. It's a consistent calf group when you go to sell it, as well as if you do keep your own replacement heifers. Research has shown that heifers born within the first 21st calving interval usually calve themselves in the first 21st day, or 21 days. It's about it. And also the average pregnancy rate going the first go around is 90% in yearlings. And then if you wait until the third 21 days, their rate is usually at about 78% pregnancy rate. And it also helps you figure out what is the right number of bulls for your herd. So if you're having too few of bulls for your herd, you'll be able to see that it is stretched out into those fourth or maybe even fifth of those 21-day periods. So here is Stacey's graph of her calving interval from the last 3 years. You can really see how she's tightened up her window throughout the where they were, and they identified where they wanted to be and took action to get there. It worked. As you can see, they really tightened up that interval.
All right, so now we're going to kind of get more to the nuts and bolts. So now that you've taken all that data, you've written everything down, now what do you do with it? So I like Excel as well. So I take all that data that I put in that little red book and I put it into an Excel file, and then it can calculate it for me, so I don't have to do it by hand. So what we're going to do is we're just kind of go through, this is what my Excel spreadsheet looks like and what I'm calculating. So this was this year's, so we'll use some real data. Cows exposed, I had 164 that we exposed to the bulls or AI bred. Cows gone. So these are the ones that were open or we decided to cull. Most of these were open. And so then we've got a total cow number of 150. So for me, that was a 91% preg rate. So that's right where we want to be. It's always better to be better than that, but we were happy with that. We always kind of estimate that we're going to be right around that 9 to 10% open. So that still hit that this year. So far, this was a few days ago, but we've got 78 calves born. So that's an important number that we're going to be using later on. And then we also have some categories for calves lost. So we're going to start calculating some death loss. I like to split it up into 2 different groups. I want to know the calves that I lost 3 days or under, and I want to know the calves that I lost that were 4 days and greater. I like to split that up just so I can see and try to manage a little bit better. So this year we've had 2 that were, they were born dead is what those 2 were. And then we lost 1 here to scours. So that came out to, so far we're at a 4% death loss. So for us, that's really good right now, but we got a long ways to go. And we don't have data for this yet because we aren't at weaning, but I like to keep track of live calves at wean. So if you guys are weaning in August, September, October, wherever you wean, whatever number you wean off. So if I've got let's say I end up with 150 calves and I weaned off 140. We need to put that number there in the live calves at wean. And then we get to calculate the percent calf crop at weaning. And this is where you take the live calves at wean and you divide it by the total cows exposed. And that will give you that percent of calf crop. And then the last few years, we've been pulling a lot of calves. So I have a section for that just to kind of keep track of it for myself. And then just like Tarah mentioned, that calving window, it is so important to keep track of that. So I do that as well. And with this, I haven't calculated a whole lot just because we're just in the first week. But total calves born, again, there's that number, 78. And we'll keep track of how many were early. And those are usually my heifers. I usually calve them in a couple weeks early, so they kind of go in that group. So otherwise it kind of screws up my first 21 days. And then we'll calculate how many were in the 21 days, the first, the second, the third, and then if I've got any stragglers. So then we'll calculate that percentage. And then I also like to keep track of how many males and how many females I have. We like to retain some heifers every year. So just kind of like to see where that's at. And then we retain all of our calves. We finish them out. So just kind of nice to know what that breakdown is later on in the feedlot. And then I like to keep track of how many sets of twins we've got. And then if I leave any bull calves, just so I know that for later on, if I'm going to have to cut them later. So that's kind of a little bit on what we do there. So now that you've got these numbers, Tarah, if you want to go to the next slide. So now that you've got all that calculated, how do you know where you're at, where you're, if that's good or bad? And so what we do is we've got some ways to measure that. So we've split it up into average herd goals or, very well managed herds. So a 90% pregnancy rate is pretty average. It's good. And then if you want to get better, 95 is maybe where you want to be there. Then both of those for an average herd or your really well managed herds, we want less than 2% abortion rate. And then in just kind of your average herds, we want to be at least 65% of the herd calving in the first 21 days. And if you've hit that, the next step to look for is maybe try to get to 80%. And then kind of that last one that I showed you on there, we want to be for average herds, you're about 80 to 85% that are weaned is that percentage calf crop that we have. And if you want to keep getting better, you want to try to get up to that 90, 95%. So that's just keeping calves alive, essentially is what that is measuring. And another one, and I got this from Dr. Armstrong, he had another one that was a really great one to measure. And I wish this is something that we could do, but I don't take weights. But so what you want to do is another really great measurement is pounds of calf weaned per cow exposed. So we'll just kind of go through this quick example. So if you've got 100 cows, we'll keep it simple, exposed at breeding, you wean 90 calves that total in 45,000 pounds. So 45,000 pounds divided by the 100 cows is 450 pound weaning weight per cow exposed. So this is a little bit more valuable than just saying that your average weaning weight was 500 pounds. This gives you a little bit better number and it makes a little bit more sense on what you're actually getting back on your return, kind of on your investment. But yeah, so that just kind of gives you a little bit better idea of what those numbers mean and kind of where you want to be at. And I think Tarah's got the next slide that will give you a little bit more information as well.
So now that Stacey just described wonderfully that you have all the records and what they mean, now we have some analysis tools that we just wanted to throw up on here and share them with you to look at your leisure. So Finbin is actually with the University of Minnesota. That really focuses on the financial records. I really like it because you can look at the top percentiles of like profitability of beef producers in the state and compare your financial records to the different percentiles to see kind of how you rank up. Another source of information to use as a benchmark is like the cow-calf standardized performance analysis which is SPA. Different regions have different ones, but this gives you a more in-depth look at production data as well as financial data that both they summarize and analyze, and it's much more in-depth than Finbin is. But just wanted to give you guys just kind of those resources if you're looking for that next step of, okay, where do I go from here? How can I improve? So as we've kind of mentioned throughout the presentation, there's a lot of different methods to keep track, and like Stacey, you could do all of them. But here's just kind of to recap of how many different methods there are. Computer programs are also very common. Cattle Max Chaps, which is through NDSU, and CowSense, which is really correlated with the SPA guidelines. So those are some Excel spreadsheets, like I mentioned earlier. If you're really tech savvy and want to create your own, that's a great resource, and you can really customize those. Notebook is also very good as well. Notebooks, like Stacey was telling me in a conversation, she said that's how she communicates with her husband of, I write it down so then he can see what happened if they're not sitting down in a room and get to talk every night. So that notebook and index cards, any type of paper form of communication is really, really good. The Calving book, the red book, you can get yours through the Minnesota Cattlemen's Association, and also phone apps. I've also heard people use like Google Keep, so it's easy, unless your phone freezes like mine does, but I guess it works as well. So many different options that you can have, but just find what works for you and stick with it, basically. So finally, I just wanted to have some take-home messages. It looks like we're right on time. What we're trying to do here is continuous herd improvement, whether you're starting smaller, you're already big. And it's more of a state of mind, I like to think about. And it's remember to set your goals. You have to measure, record, and analyze to improve your herd. Also, like I said earlier, don't waste your time collecting information that you're not going to use. Each operation is different, so we certainly don't recommend everyone collecting all of this data or all the data possible. Do what makes sense for you and your operation. Finally, no matter what size your herd is, some form of record keeping is essential. I have a small herd, 12 cows, nothing like Stacey, but I mean, even herds as small as mine still need record keeping. You may think you can remember it all, but trust me, you can't. My record keeping looks a lot different than Stacey's, as it will look all different than all of yours. Thank you for joining us tonight. Here is the rest of, I think I'll just give it over to Melissa.
So go ahead and let Dana do the wrap up quick, but we do have a few questions, whichever you would prefer to do first, Tarah.
Perfect, let's do questions.
Okay, I've got one here sent to me. Sorry. What are some ways that you can work to tighten your calving window? Like, what are some specific things that you should do? So you write that information down, when they're calving, what do you do with it?
I guess I can start, Tarah.
Stacey, do you want to? Yeah, please.
I guess for what we did, we looked at that. My goal was always to get that a little bit tighter. Again, we're not the ones that are going to the sales barn that really want that nice, tight, uniform group, but I still want that in my own feedlot. I want trucks that can fill up at the same time. So what we did is we actually added more bull power, and because I think we were just a little bit short. So one of our big things was we added a lot more bulls. And then we also started AIing our replacement heifers. So getting them kind of out of the way first, and then using a cleanup bull on them. So that was one of the ways that we did start with that. And then we started paying more attention to how we were picking our females. We retain most of our heifers. We do buy some occasionally, but we do try to keep our own. And with those, I really tried to watch the cows that we were keeping them from that were in that first 21 days. I tried not to deviate from that. There might have been a few that I liked that maybe made the cut, but we really tried to stick really close to that just because of what the research has said. And it makes sense. They're going to be bigger. They're going to cycle first, and it just kind of makes sense. So that's kind of the few things that we did to really help with that. And it worked. It's been getting tighter every year. So I don't know, Tarah, if you've got anything else to add to that, or Melissa.
Yeah, maybe just to reiterate what I've heard Dr. Joe Armstrong and Dr. Eric Mosel talk about is really keeping a strict standard. I know those like to slip through of which ones you like, the temperament and things, but keeping that strict standard of if they don't cycle within the first 2 cycle or don't calve within the first 2 cycles. I heard Dr. Joe say like, if they're done, they're called. So having that standard and having those few sneak in, that's okay. But just having those standards that you have to be able to set and to be able to control that calving window.
And just to add to what you had shared, Stacey, was fantastic. To actually put it into that visual, I think is really helpful because and then associate some tag numbers with that, because until you see that, okay, that's that gal, she always calves the very, end of my calving period. To actually get that data back is really helpful because it's very hard to, unless there are some, some instances where they do get moved up a cycle, but it's really hard to move them from the back of your calving period all the way up to the front.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yep. Another question is, so you had the one listed in your record book, Stacey. What other codes, like what would some of those other numbers be? What else would you record?
I guess I kind of forgot to mention it, but I do keep track of body condition score as well. That was one I didn't mention, but we do keep track of body condition scoring. So those range from 1 to 10. So we try to stick around that. We're probably more close to that 6 or 7. We're a little heavy. We got dairy feed around here, so those girls get fed really well. So we're a little on the heavy side. So we keep track of those numbers. The calving ease. Troy just asked, when do we body condition score? I like to do it right before calving. I like to do it after they're calved, after a little while, and then throughout the summertime, I kind of keep an eye on them too. So kind of throughout the whole year, to be honest. And then we like to keep track of the calving ease. So those numbers again, let me look them up quick, but your 1 is there was no assistance or I didn't see it. Number 2 is you assisted, but you probably didn't have to. 3, you assisted and it was hard. So I use the 3 as if I pulled and it was forward. And then number 4 would be a cesarean, which we never really have any of those. And then 5, we have a bunch. So that's an abnormal presentation. So just in the last week, we've pulled 2 backwards. One had a 1 foot forward, 1 foot back. So we get them all over the place. So I try to keep track of those and what cows are having them. And then the other numbers we keep track of, let's see, I guess just the sex code. Are they heifers? Are they bulls? Or is it a steer? We try to castrate everything right away. We do let some slip by. If they're a little twin, we'll let them kind of stay a bull for a while, and we just try to keep track of that so we can cut them later on. So I guess those would be the ones that we kind of keep track of. Tarah, I don't know if you've got anything else to add to that.
Yeah, we like to keep track of, especially the scours and especially, any type of illness, pneumonia, anything also how long it takes them to recover. Because I do think that length of time that they're kind of down and in the dumps does affect how they do later, all the way to weaning, all the way throughout their life. So I like to kind of keep track of that. But yeah, you did a wonderful job.
You also maybe already touched on it, Stacey, but to kind of build off of what Troy talked about on Monday night, do you also keep track of anybody that you may have to give, colostrum supplement replacement to?
Yep, we keep track of all of that. So that kind of goes on that cow card too. So we've got some cows that have some ugly udders that probably should go. So we know that they're going to have some issues. And so we have that written down that if we don't get that girl in the headlock and get that calf sucking, we give it colostrum right away. I tube everything if it needs it, just so I know it gets done. But we do keep track of that and who gets it. And we get all the colostrum from the dairy. So we're really lucky that way, but you can also use the buy it from your feed store too, the full colostrum replacement.
Okay, I got a question. Preferred method of what castration method do you prefer, and when do you prefer to do it?
I guess for us, I like to castrate right away. I use the Cheerios. We do it day 1 or 2. And if we let them go, then we'll cut them later on. So I guess that's kind of what we do, but I prefer to do it right away.
Yeah, mine too. It's easier on the calf. It's so kind of easier on the mom. I think the mom's gonna freak out no matter what. But especially, I think Stacey, I remember you telling me that about that a little bit later, would it increase the little bit of testosterone that they were going to have?
Yeah, I think some different, I guess everybody is really different. We implant pretty heavy. So we give an implant before they go out on pasture. So I feel like that helps a little bit. But otherwise, yeah, we like to do it right away. Let's see. And I did see one from Troy here. When do you start calculating the first 21-day cycle? This one's going to be tough for me this year. I'm not going to lie. Our bulls we had a couple Simmental bulls that they got out early. So I'm not sure if I'm going to count it when those little stinkers got out, or if I actually count it when the actual bulls got out. So normally on a normal year, when that doesn't happen, I usually like to take whenever that first calf hits the ground. So whether that's, let's say the calving date should have been January 24th. If that first calf hit the ground on the 23rd, I wait like 2 or 3 calves into it, and then I start from there. So I kind of consider them maybe early, and then I start after that. So I try to start as close to that calving date that we should have, but kind of play it by how the cows are acting too there. So
I also have a comment. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
There's a comment. I missed this, Stacey, but someone commented that they, if I'm reading this correctly, they start with the second mature cow that calves.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So yeah, very similar.
Sure. Yep. And Troy just added here. So for those of you viewing on Facebook Live, according to the SPA, it's the third calf for mature cows. So, okay. Any other questions for Tarah and Stacey? I think I got all the messages that were being sent to me. So.
Well, I kind of just wanted to add to, my husband and I have been kind of battling this back and forth. If you've got multiple people calving, or you've got multiple people checking calves, it is so important to communicate with each other. So like my husband and I, we use a notebook and we write down every cow that calves, what time, and it gets repeated multiple times throughout our system, but at least that notebook, it stays right on the kitchen table. So my husband usually takes the night shift, I take the day shift. So then I know what he did at night, or I'm usually up with him chasing cows in and getting them in the barn. But at least then we kind of know who got vaccinated, who needs to be tagged yet. Did that bull calf get castrated? So we have all that information. I know a few of our friends, they have, a husband or a grandpa and the son take it back and forth, and they do one check at noon or midnight, one does it at 2. So with something like that, if you're alternating, you need to have such good communication. So if you see a water bag at midnight, what do? Do you write it down? Do you text them? So just if you're having multiple people check your cows, just make sure there's good communication. We also use we text message each other all the time. So if I see a water bag out at noon, I'll text my husband that. So then I've got a timestamp on it too. So it's like, oh shoot, it's now 2 o'clock. She should have had that calf by now. So you've kind of got a timestamp when you do it that way too. So I wanted to add that in.
Stacey, I got another question for you and Tarah. What factors do you look at when deciding what time of year you want your cows to calve?
Do you want to go, Tarah, or do you want me to?
Because I'm the exact opposite from you. I'll kind of say my point of view things. I typically wait for April, just because the fair weather, calvers, that's typically what we do just with such a small herd, just because we have great open pasture that's not susceptible to mud. So that's definitely a big factor that you should look at when looking at spring calving, because that can be definitely a detriment to the health of your calves. So finding uphill dry land for spring calving, it's definitely what we're having right now. So those are kind of some factors that I look at when I think just temperature and mud considerations. But Stacey, do you want to talk about why you calve?
Yeah, we're odd ducks. We like to calve here in January. We're a little different than some of the other herds around here, but we like to calve at this time so we can hit that market when we finish our calves out. I like to So I want my calves, when they're finished, I want them out that April, May, June. I don't want to get any further down there if I can help it. And also for us, we run a lot of just crop acres too. So if we can calve and get done before we're in the fields, it's better for us. It's easier for us to do that. So that's kind of why we calve earlier on. And I hate mud. So Minnesota cement is the best way to calve in our opinion, but it just kind of fits with everything we do. And then our fall herd, it just kind of happened that we ended up getting one of them. They're really simple. They're really easy. So the fall herd's probably the easiest one. They don't take a whole lot of work. They're calving out on green grass. And for us, it just helps us fill up our feedlot year round. So that's kind of why we split up our herd, and our facilities just couldn't handle that herd all together. So if we can split it up, it worked out better for us.
I think to add to that too, Haley. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying having the range of calving. So I have a bunch of different options.
Right. That was a great question, Haley. Just to add to that, I think that an important thing is to look at what is your end market for your calves. Are you, a seed stock producer? Do they need to be a certain size when they reach a year old? Are you trying to hit a certain market with feeder calves or bulls, or are you selling, heifers off the farm? So I think that's based on that, what's your end market? Then also kind of what is your forage availability? What are you trying to make the most utilization out of your forage if you're putting them out on pasture versus dry lot? All of that. I have a question. Do you guys use are familiar there a little bit more on the some of the paid subscriptions to some calving software, apps, etc.?
Yeah, I've used Cattle Max. We've used Cattle Max before. I personally didn't like it. I liked my Excel spreadsheets better. I thought it calculated the data that I wanted to keep track of a little bit better. And with having, it was hard. I wanted a system that could track everything, the feedlot, the cow calves, everything. And it didn't work for me. So I didn't like that. So I liked my Excel spreadsheets that I created a little bit better. But we've got a neighbor that calves out probably 200-300 head, and they absolutely love Cattle Max. They would praise it up and down all day long. So I think again, just kind of personal preference, but I use the Cattle Max, and just, it wasn't for me. I like the Excel spreadsheets better.